First question for all the panelists here to have their 2 cents on that is that you see the Pakistan stock market and the capital market has done so well, and these capital markets are considered to be the backbone of any economy. So what steps we really need to take to make this market more sustainable and to make it more attractive for the foreign investors so that it can be a continuous and sustainable source of foreign investments into Pakistan. So Ali, starting from you, please.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you for inviting me. I started my career in '93 with the stock exchange, and I've been out for about 25 years now. So I have a pretty good idea about the potential of Pakistan from Pakistan Telecom, the first GDR which was done, which is by the way the largest in emerging markets at that point in time in 1993, $988 million. $988 million. And then in a week's time, we bought $988 million worth of submarines. So basically the money went there. So I have a lot of experience in the last 25 years for the region as a whole. I'll say a few things from a global perspective rather than a local perspective. I think, let me take the positives out of the way first. I think our regulators are very good. I'm not saying that because a lot of regulators are sitting here. I'm comparing them with most of the regulators in the region. They're very progressive. You're able to talk to them. They listen. If you go to Korea, your regulators will not listen to you. They will not give a yes or no. So by comparison, our regulators are very, very good, whether that's SECB or SPP or others. I think our market has, the dynamics and the mechanics have improved, can do a lot more, liquidity can be a lot more. I think that's a function of what interest is in the market. And I think the interest in the market is not driven by how you try to facilitate and bring more retailers in. Retailers को आप धक्का लगा लेंगे नहीं आएंगे. Retailers उस वक्त आएंगे जब उनका ख्याल है वो पैसा बनाएंगे. It's very simple. वो बेशक paper based delivery है या वो electronic delivery है. If you think you can make money, you'll come in. So I think the fundamental issue is what I think all of the experienced people said, it's a boom bust cycle. You don't have a continuous structural growth story. And if you don't have a growth story, then it's difficult to retain people into the market. And once they go out, it becomes a problem to bring them in. I think the last 2 decades, there were 2 things which helped Pakistan. And we'll talk about what happens in the next 2 decades from a global perspective, at least in my view. I think the first one was that there was a low interest rate environment. You had a lot of liquidity, and because of a lot of liquidity, when you have that, it actually flows into the tier 3, 3 or 4 marginal economies, into illiquid assets. That's what has happened in the last 20 years. Into your startups, into frontier markets, into some very high risk assets. That's the first one. I think the second one is that our geopolitical situation continued to favor us, and we were able to bring in more funds through 9/11, through other things, and that allowed us to sustain. Every bust which came, हमें जाके मिल गया, किसी UAE के पास गए, Saudi Arabia के पास गए, US के पास गए, पैसे आ गए. I think if you look forward, the next 20 years, and that's a global phenomenon, not specific to Pakistan, I think COVID has fundamentally changed the world. The world which was changing slowly has been fundamentally changed. What do I mean by that? I think there are 2, 3 global factors happening. The first one is that the low interest rate environment is gone. So, आप पहले भी करते थे, people say कि जी 2008 से Bernanke उससे पहले से भी कर रहे हैं, सब पैसे डाल रहे हैं. The main difference in the last 3 years is that the money didn't go to the financial institutions, they went to the retailers. And on average, about $48,000 have been given to an individual in the US, and they have been really spending it. जो उन्होंने पैसा कभी देखा नहीं. And because of that, inflation has gone up. And inflation goes up, you obviously have to raise rates. And when you raise rates, the rest of the world is not ready for that. So you have a stronger dollar. And what happened to England in the last 2 weeks, or that will happen to a lot of countries, or is already happening to a lot of countries. So वो जो low interest rate वाला environment है, that is out, at least in the short term. And that actually doesn't benefit Pakistan. So that's one global secular trend, which I think we need to be cognizant about. I think the second one is that your geopolitics, I won't go into that, I will look at the financial side of that, that US is retreating globally from the world. That's a fact. We know that. At what pace they retreat is questionable or arguable, but they are retreating. Once they retreat, the Middle East dynamics completely change. The China-US dynamics completely change. So the things we used to rely on, कि आप जाके UAE के पास जाएंगे और करेंगे और वो कर देंगे जो I think Dr. Mifta was talking about, they are not going to give the money now like they used to in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years time. Not that they don't have the money, they actually have a lot more money, but their need to give it to us actually has gone down substantially. अगर वो इजराइल के साथ चले गए हैं, अगर वो ईरान के साथ कर रहे हैं, तो they don't need to rely on us for their security. I think that's a fundamental thing which is changing, which will affect our economy and our markets as well, which actually has helped. Both were tailwinds in the last 20 years. They will not be tailwinds. They will actually be headwinds going forward. The third one, which is global, is Russia, Ukraine, and we talk about a lot of things. But one fundamental thing from a financial point of view which has changed is that it had never happened before that a war happens and US takes a country out of SWIFT. वो पहले कभी नहीं होता था, आपकी wars होती थी, सब कुछ होता था, but the global system continued. Now they took Russia out, then because of that, you will see a very divided world where people will start moving away from US dollar, which is bearish for US dollar, but in the long term. And that will affect Pakistan as well, that whose side you are going to be in the medium to long term. So I think Pakistan, ये जो हम सारी बातें करते हैं, जो भी डॉक्टर मिफ्ता भी सब कह रहे थे कि बूम बस्ट, वो हम हर दफ़ा एक नया इन्वेस्टर बेस लेके आते थे, एंड आई बीन डूइंग इट फॉर सिंस 93. तो ढूंढ लेते थे कहीं से कोई नया मिलेगा, वो आके इन्वेस्ट कर देगा, उसको पता नहीं होगा. स्टार्टअप वाज द लास्ट फेज, बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ स्टार्टअप गाइज वर 28-year-olds who got a lot of money, the investors, and they did not have the history of the last 30 years. So they said कि यार potential बहुत है, 220 million, let's go in and we'll make money. But when they see the dynamics, so I think we have been found out, and we need to find a problem, the solution to the problem. And I'm saying that with all due respect, actually, basically, कि वो जब मिफ्ता साहब भी बात कर रहे थे, वो he was talking more like either an opposition leader or a think-led guy. He's the guy who's an incumbent. So I think that's our main issue, that whether the power which is attained or retained by the people, that can be result in execution of the policies. Problem हम सबको पता है. So that to me is the fundamental. Next 20 years or 20 years, I think the next 5 years we have to find a solution. Otherwise, it will not be sustainable the way the numbers are. I can spin a positive story as well. I think that, but I think we need to recognize that fact. The solution actually is not that difficult. The solutions are two. Number one, the numbers are not very big. Getting an IMF 1.2 billion or 3 billion, Egypt is going to get 15 billion. So if we have the right story, getting the liquidity going is not a problem. Number one. Number two is that export wali jo baat hoti hai, it's and Asif Peer is sitting here. I think whether that's IT or whether that's financial services or other things, we have a lot of human potential which actually can be exported. Or jo Dr. Ishit ne baat ki thi about financial services, that I think is the biggest potential as well. Because US में इस वक्त services based inflation है, commodity based inflation नहीं है. They have a deficit in employment. So that's the thing which we need to focus on, and the numbers are not large enough. We can actually do it within a few years. But we have to recognize that we have been found out, and we need to do. Once that's fixed, your markets will fly. Because we are very, very entrepreneurial, and our management actually skills are second to none. And I'm saying that with authority because I've done the whole region for 30 years.
Thank you, Ali. Thank you for enlightening us. And